Actually, Krishna is giving different arguments here for fighting. Of course, the main argument is that we are not the body at all. We are actually the spirit soul. We are Atma, not body. So this is an important point. And the Atma is indestructible. It cannot be killed at all. On the other hand, the body is destructible and cannot be saved. It must be destroyed. Of course, nobody likes that. Everybody wants to maintain their body. Everybody wants to live forever. But the unfortunate condition is you cannot do so. Now, of course, in modern science, we tend to think that maybe we can do this. So there are different attempts to try to do this. Some years ago, they had the brilliant idea that in the future, probably, we could prolong the life of the body or even revive the dead body due to modern things, you know. And even bodies which were dead for a long time could be revived again. So with that in mind, then they decided that they would, this of course the money-making scheme is that they would freeze everybody's body. And then maybe in the future, when they discovered the means, they would revive the body again and bring it back to life. So they charged people money to get their body frozen when they died, in the hopes that they would somehow wake up from death, maybe 200 years later, and they would find a means of bringing them back to life again. So people pay for this, hoping that somehow or other they'll come back to life. Of course, they did not realize that the soul's probably gone away by then, and the soul's not going to come back to that body. So even if they brought the body back to life, if you had a different soul in there, it wouldn't be them. So it's useless. Anyway, the problem was that they charged people money for this, but then I think what happened is they freeze them all, you know? But then they had a power blackout and all the bodies melted. So then that was the end of that scheme, because everything melted and decomposed. So the problem is that we don't want to die, we don't want the body to die, because we think of the body, but the body will die anyway, and no matter how we try to avoid it, nevertheless it dies. In the Puranas, in the Bhagavatam, there is how Hiranyakasipu wanted to live forever also. Hiranyakasipu wanted to live forever, so therefore he did a lot of austerities to get Brahma to give him a boon, some blessing that he could live forever. And even Brahma said, I cannot make you live forever. This material body must perish. I must also die. So Brahma has a very long lifespan. His body is very special. It's not like our body. It's material, but it is very, very fine material. Actually, this is very gross body, and above us we have Devata bodies, which are more fine, made out of material elements, but in a different combination so that they last longer. So Devata bodies will last maybe 1,000 times longer than our bodies, more than that. And Brahma's body is even finer than that, finest material elements, and that will last for billions of years. One day of Lord Brahma is 1,000 times 320,000 years times 1,000. That's one day of Brahma. And he lives 100 years, so a long period of time. But he must die. His body must also, the soul must separate from the body also. He must give it up. So no one can maintain the body forever. The material body must die. And Hiranyakasipu tried to do it and he could not do it. Ravana wants eternal body, cannot have it also. So this is one fact of the material world. And why we want to have an eternal body? Because we think we are the body. Therefore we think, I want to make this body eternal because I'm the body. But this is the big illusion. We're not the body. But because we think we're a body, we don't want the body to die. So just to remind us that this is a problem for us, and therefore we have to overcome this problem of what to do with this material body. The body must die. By our karma, we must have a limited span and make us think there must be something more than limited span of life. So the final answer is yes, there is, because you're not the body at all. You're something eternal, which is the soul. So previously in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also said it is like clothing. Just as you put the body puts clothing on, and then you wear the clothing and take it off, put on new clothing. So the soul also puts on new bodies. And when it gets old, takes the old body away, puts on a new body, gets a new body. And this way we go on. So, in other words, the soul is eternal. As far as science is concerned, modern science anyway, they started from the opposite direction and thought, okay, we will do away with superstition and things, scriptural definitions of God and soul, etc., because we can't see them, and we end up with all sorts of, abstract theories, which we can't prove. So let's start with things we can prove. So that we start with things we can see and sense with our material eyes. This does not exclude other things, but it is only a limitation on what we'll accept as, real, that's all. It doesn't exclude other things which we don't see. It just says that these things are real, that's all. It doesn't say that other things are unreal. So we should not mistake science and think that it is proven there is no soul, or there is no spirit, or there is no God. It's not the responsibility of science to do that, and nor can it do that at this moment. So it merely defines certain things and tries to work within these observable limits and find some sort of truth. The unfortunate thing is, or maybe the good thing about that is that we can't have the truth if we separate it from spirit. It doesn't work. The truth will not work. In other words, if we don't see the whole reality, partial reality is also zero. In other words, without God and without soul, there is no real truth. So this is the fallacy of science. This is the fault of science. And we think that we can get truth out of this and make everything work. We will not be able to do it. It won't work. And this is very factually proven by everything. What is the accomplishment of science, finally? Does anyone know? What does it accomplish? Anybody know? What has it done? What is its purpose? One purpose is truth. On the abstract level, we want to find out the truth about things, what is matter, how does it work, etc. So what is the ultimate goal of that?
This.
We want benefit, some benefit. Yeah, we want to be more comfortable in our life, extend our lifespan and do things like that. So then we'll say, yes, so see what science has done for us. We got vaccinations and medical science and stuff like this and better houses, etc. And our lifespan has increased somewhat from, 50 years to 70 years or something like that. So they would say, this is the proof, therefore, that science works. But actually, if we look closely, we'll find that actually it really doesn't work like that. We may have temporarily increased the lifespan of some people, but not all people. Because if we probably take the whole average of the whole world, we'll probably find that the whole lifespan isn't increased. Because more and more population grows, more and more people starve. So we'll find that actually it's not so true that we've solved the problem. And, of course, we have so-called solved some diseases. But we also created diseases. We got modern diseases. Many doctors say that, 50 years ago, we did not have so many these things. These are all modern diseases. They weren't there before. So therefore, we have, in our process of becoming modernized and living longer, we have more diseases also. And therefore, we suffer from these, and everyone dies of these things. So therefore, what have we solved? We made the lifespan a little longer for some people, that's all. The other problem is, what if you have a longer lifespan? If you suffer more, what is the use? That means you have longer to suffer. You have a longer lifespan. You increase your lifespan by 10 years, but you're no happier, you're actually suffering more. So what is the use of that? And we also see that is true. In general, people suffer more. We have a new word for it in the modern world. We don't call it suffering anymore. We call it stress. Give it a nice name. You don't call it suffering because then people will get really frightened. So they just call everybody has some stress. So work causes stress in the modern world. Study causes stress. Even small children have stress now. And they have antidepressants for children now. They're very, very common in schools in America. All the small kids are taking antidepressants. So everybody is under stress in this material world. So it means they're not happy. They are suffering. And therefore they have to take drugs to hide the suffering. It doesn't cure the suffering, it just hides it a little bit. So is this the progress that we got out of science? That we end up having to take drugs to make us forget our suffering? When we didn't have the suffering, even if we lived shorter lives before, we didn't have that suffering. So there are some problems in this so-called science that's supposed to make us happy. It doesn't make us happy after all. Why is that? That's because there are certain laws, peculiar laws governing this world which we don't know about. Very peculiar laws that cannot allow you to get happiness that you don't deserve. You can live longer, but you suffer more. If you're bound to suffer, you must suffer. You cannot improve that position at all. So there's a peculiar moral law in the universe. And that is, according to your actions, according to the quality of your actions, then you get results. So if you cause suffering, you get suffering. And no matter how much science you have, you cannot prevent your suffering, even if you strive to. If you've done acts of suffering to others, then you must get suffering. So this has got nothing to do with science on one level, because science will not admit that such a law exists. They cannot prove it. They cannot in any way, demonstrate it in a laboratory. But this is something which goes along with the consciousness and the soul. There are values in life apart from material bodies and chemical formulas. And these values are not simply abstract things without any importance. They're very important. And they will create qualities in life, and they will create results in the future lives also. So this we call the law of karma. And it ultimately depends upon the consciousness of the soul. And we cannot separate it from God. We cannot separate this law from the soul. But actually we all want happiness. We all want eternal life. You cannot get it by manipulating material nature and manipulating your material body. It won't work that way. We cannot separate matter from the soul and the qualities of the soul and the values of the soul. We cannot do that. So this attempt to be happy without recognizing soul, God, and laws governing the soul will not work. It will fail. And it has failed in the past, and it has failed in the present. It will fail in the future. And we'll never get that happiness you're looking for. So Arjuna was suffering in the battle before the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna was suffering because he had to kill people he didn't want to kill, etc. So what is the solution to the suffering? The solution to suffering is to recognize that apart from the body, the soul exists. And the soul has its own qualities and its own needs. The soul recognizes God, serves God, and then all the other problems will get solved. That is the very simple solution to all the problems in the world that Krishna presents. So therefore you concentrate on me, you think of me, you worship me, and forget everything else. And then that'll solve the problem. So you fight, he says, you fight here. And the fight may cause problems, it may cause suffering or killing or whatever. But that is not so important. Because you're not the body anyway, you're the soul. But if you do the right thing, then you will be peaceful. If you do the wrong thing, no matter what you do, whatever you get in this world, you have to suffer in this lifetime, next lifetime. So therefore we have to understand that the laws are the laws connected with the soul. And though we have a body here and the body does activities, we have to be very careful what activities we do. Because this has repercussion on our own future and it has influence on all other living entities. There's a theory in science now that everything affects everything. That one movement of one molecule in one corner of the universe will affect everything else in the universe, including one molecule on the opposite side of the universe. In other words, everything affects everything. And that if we read the movements of one section of the universe, we can read the whole universe also. Everything is imprinted in everything in some form or another. This is a modern theory they got in science nowadays. So that is true on another level. And that is true in terms of human actions. When we do actions, it affects everything in the world. We don't see the effect, but everything is related with everything else anyway, physically. And when the human chooses to act by his free will of the jiva, this has an effect on everything else in the world, in the universe, actually. And of course, all living entities are acting at all times. So therefore, everybody's affecting everybody at all times. It's a very complex interaction going on. So we have to understand where all this is leading. We affect and we get affected. So the responsibility for the act is not the body. The responsibility for the act is the soul. The soul is the conscious element in the body. When we're a human being, then we have the consciousness to choose. When we're animal, we don't have that choice. When we're a human being, then we have the choice. I am conscious, I do this act, I am responsible for the act. So therefore, in the human form of life, we are responsible for our future and everybody else's future because we affect everybody else. And this is the responsibility of every human being. So therefore we have to be very, very careful what we do and how we act in this life. And this, of course, is one of the instructions of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. He keeps saying, you must fight, you must do your duty, you must do the proper thing. Finally, he says, you've heard me, now do what you want to do. You choose what you want to do. And of course, Arjuna says, yes, I've heard you, and I believe what you say, so I will follow what you say. Actually, I will act, but I will act according to what you say. So he chooses, and he chooses under the guidance of Krishna, so that's very good. So similarly, we also have to choose. Now, it is difficult to choose. We don't know what to choose, what is right, what is wrong. That everybody doesn't know. Like in the modern world now, there is a abortion problem. Is it right or is it wrong? And we'll have arguments, complicated arguments on both sides about abortion. Is it good or is it bad? And the Catholic Church will still say, no, we can't have abortions, because it means, destruction of life, etc. But then other people say, no, you should have abortions. And then I don't know what the president thinks one side, and the other Republicans and the Democrats have an issue on this also, I think, abortion or no abortion. But nobody really knows for sure what is the truth. So on so many issues we don't know. It's very difficult to figure out. So therefore, that is why Scripture is there, to give us some very clear answers on these issues, and give us some standards to follow on these issues, so that we can make proper decisions on everything. In this way, then, we follow the guidance of Scripture, then we make a decision, choosing to accept the verdict of Scripture and using our intelligence. We're responsible for the act. But because we have Scripture behind us, then we have some advantage. And it's not simply something based on feeling or what somebody else said. It has a higher advantage to it. So Arjuna followed Krishna, and then at the end, Krishna says, "You surrender unto me." And what happens? You are freed from all sinful reactions. You're free from all suffering. You don't get these bad reactions anymore. So if we follow this advice of the Scripture, the advice of Krishna, then, and we do our acts, thinking intelligently when we act, then we can get out of this suffering condition. We get out, we can get other people out also. So this is, if we want to help the world, this is what we have to do. We have to do this. Act intelligently. And this affects our future, and it affects everyone else's future. So this is a little bit different way of improving the world. If we improve the world by science, it really doesn't work. Ultimately, everybody suffers the same. Increase the food crops, and everything goes down again. Make genetic modifications of crops, think it's going to be better, it gets worse. More fertilizer, more insecticides, gets worse. Like this. We increase the crops, but then everyone gets sick of the insecticides or something. Like this. And constantly we have all these problems. Well, it doesn't work. So we have to have a new understanding. So it's based upon understanding of soul and God and the laws of God. And based on that, then we can carry out our life very, very nicely. This is the basic process. So as I said, science doesn't really deal with this because they can't prove it. But because it's not proved by this science, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Contrarily, we know that though science tries to work and has some goals, the goals fail miserably. Nobody gets happier. In spite of all the science in the world, everyone gets more miserable. It's very paradoxical, is it not? We try to make people more happy, they end up more stressed. With all the nice inventions we have in the world. Something is wrong with that whole theory of material things will make you happier. It doesn't work. So, some scientists are a little bit more broad-minded. So now they do have something called consciousness studies. In physics, actually, in science itself, consciousness studies is related to physics, because physics also has to do with a peculiar thing where there must be an observer in quantum physics. Who does quantum physics here? Anybody? No quantum physicists? Anyway, this weird thing they discovered in quantum physics that somehow or other the theory does not work in quantum physics unless we have an observer. And if we do the experiment one way, we get a result. If we do it a different way, we get a different result. In other words, if the conscious observer thinks we will treat the photon as a particle, it will act like a particle. And if we want to treat it as a wave, it'll act as a wave. But wave and particle are contradictory, so it sounds weird how your consciousness and how you choose to do the experiment will influence the result of the experiment. But they've done this experiment every time, and it's like that. Measure it as a wave, it's a wave. Measure it as a particle, becomes a particle. And it cannot do that by common logic. And it depends upon how we choose to think of it. And then it changes its mode of operating. So this is a part of quantum physics. The physics says that there is an observer there, the experimenter, and this somehow influences the result of the experiment. Nobody can explain it. And we do get results in quantum physics. A lot of the things in the modern world come from quantum physics, electronic things, computers, etc. have to deal with quantum physics. So it works, the final result works, but how to fit the consciousness in it, no one has figured that out. They've tried to take out the consciousness, but that complicates the whole theory. And we accept it, then that forces us to accept something else besides the gross matter, and nobody wants to do that. So nobody's ever solved this problem, and they've been working on that for the last 100 years, since Einstein and that in the 1900s, all the 1900 to 2000. Nobody solved the problem. All the scientific brains have not solved the problem because they don't want to accept consciousness, basically. So that itself points out that there is a problem in science itself with matter. If we simply take matter as everything, it doesn't work. There has to be something else, but they don't want to accept it. So therefore, they've introduced this other thing called consciousness theory in science itself, and they have studies of it, which are very preliminary at the moment. It's just come in a few years ago. The last 10 years, they have these courses on consciousness, and they don't know really how it works or not. Nevertheless, there are. This is a good symptom in one sense. On the other hand, we get the far out scientists, and some are not. Maybe people will brand them not scientists at all because they go too far out, and they take the opposite end and deal with the anomalies of some of the anomalies of the material world, etc., and try to figure out how those things work. But eventually, we'll relate them together. But what it does show is that there is something else in this universe. People have done studies on mind. Now, of course, the scientists will think mind is consciousness, and mind is equal to spirit, like that. Of course, we have a different theory, and mind is different from consciousness, and from mind is also material. Anyway, they say mind when they think of thought also, and consciousness, they put it all together. But they have discovered that there is a force of mind. Some scientists will accept it, some won't accept it. But nevertheless, there are indications, it is proved, that mind has force. They've done experiments, of trying to move objects with the mind and all this. Of course, some people are very good at it. They can move objects across the table with using their mind. And somehow they can do it. But on a more common level, they just do it with common experiments, just pressing a button and seeing if the object that falls will go to the left or right. Make it go to the right, make it go to the right. And if it's a level surface and the ball rolls to the right more times than the left, then obviously pushing the button doesn't do it because it's electronically controlled. So only the thought's going to make it go to the right. And if you make it go to the left, then it starts going to the left about 1,000 times, maybe a little bit more will go to the left than the right end, like this. So by doing the experiment many times, they found yes, if you say make it go to the right, deviation goes to the right. A little bit more than half-half. And if you say make it go to the left, right, it go to the right. So how does it work? Your thought does something there. And they've done this experiment so many times with so many people, and still the same results there. So therefore the conclusion is that thought or mind has a force behind it, which affects objects in this world. And if it has a force, it must be real. So therefore mind must be real. Thought must be real. Physically real. So this is something new. Science never thought that mind was a real thing or thought was real. But the experiments are showing this nowadays. And no one's able to disprove it also. So this is another area of experimentation now in the modern world. In this way, gradually, we will increase the boundaries of science, so to speak, and eventually, science will accept soul also, but of course the whole definition of science will have to change because they can't prove it in the same way. But they will have to accept it eventually. And of course, beyond the mind, the soul, we also have to accept subtle elements as well as gross elements. Mind is a subtle element. It's not a spirit soul. It's only an element again. Thought is a material product only. It's not consciousness itself, but it has physical force in this world. So we have a subtle body made out of mind, intelligence, ego, etc. Subtle material energy. And then we have gross material energy like this. So there's two categories of energy. And beyond that we have the soul, which is the master of both, which gives life, let's say, to everything, the body and the mind and the gross and subtle bodies. So that is the position in the modern world. There's some inkling of something there, but they don't quite know how to deal with it yet. But there is scientists experimenting in that area. So in this way, to some degree, there is some admittance in science itself of the existence of something beyond the material body itself. However, to get to the stage of understanding about karma and ethics and rules of conduct and how this actually also is a certain law in the universe, this is another much higher stage of things to understand that. Nevertheless, maybe if science goes on, they will eventually also discover this as well. But it is already being stated in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and other spiritual literatures. The rules are already there, so we don't have to wait for science to prove it. We can accept it on faith and then work with the rules right now. And even if other people don't want to improve their own life, we can improve our life by following the rules that Krishna has set out in the Bhagavad Gita. So this is something we can do. Okay, any question there?
Questions?
Hare Krishna, any questions from the floor? From the students? Otherwise you don't understand science.
Maharaj is very well versed in everything under science subject. So take this opportunity because Maharaj will be here for he's going to Japan. So anything you have doubt in your studies, you can ask Maharaj. Anything, don't worry.
What's the difference between mind and consciousness?
Mind, well, according to the Vedic version, mind is a material element. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul, which is spiritual. So the ability to get knowledge means awareness of things, awareness of self, awareness of other things. This belongs to the soul. It's the quality of the soul. It is a knower, it is an experiencer. The mind is just like the body. It is another like a machine, part of a machine. Just like we drive a car, so the car is not me, but I use the car. So therefore I use the body, I use the senses, and I use the mind. So mind is something, of course, we don't see. It's not like this. It's also not the brain. It's related to the brain, but it's not the brain. It is so we call it a subtle material element. Something you cannot see, but it functions on behalf of the soul, just like the gross body does. So we have the subtle body and the gross body. The subtle body acts on behalf of the soul, and the gross body acts on behalf of the soul for the purposes of the soul. Both of them act.
Maharaj, something like the radio waves.
What, mind?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, we can say it is also one scientist, is Edward Tiller, I think his name is. He's devised some instrument actually to detect. He doesn't call it the mind, but he can say or the subtle body, but he can say that he's detected certain layers of energy around the body. Yeah, certain layers, like aura, we can say the aura of the body. Being able to detect that with this instrument, scientific instrument. It is some sort of vibration, some sort of energy is vibration, I can say. So some sort of vibration, but on a very subtle level. And within that vibration, there is what we call thoughts. What is a thought? It's hard to understand what a thought is, isn't it? It's some certain conceptions of things. It's not actually things like this, but it's the image of things. So these are held, and we can say, held in the mind. The ultimate production must come from the soul, because the soul is the perceiver. So without the perception, you can't have a thought. So the actual, let's say the ultimate thought and the ultimate perception must come from the soul. But then it gets into the subtle body and the mind, and it gets held there. And then it can be projected with that as material energy, whatever, and projected outwards.
Maharaj.
Mind is a material body, right? Can we use mind to attain higher consciousness?
Yeah, well, we can use the gross body also, and the mind. This is the whole purpose of our body and our mind at the moment, is to use the body and the mind, not for material purpose, but for spiritual purposes. So even though they're material, they can be utilized in such a way we get a spiritual result. This is the good thing about the body and the mind. If we use them the wrong way, then it does the opposite. It binds us up more into the material misery. But on the other hand, the mind and the body can also be used to elevate us and produce more spiritual awareness. So that process of engaging the body and the mind is called Bhakti Yoga. We utilize the body and the mind, at the same time we have devotion coming from the heart. And we use these to concentrate on Supreme Lord. Then we get a spiritual effect in the soul, increasing and increasing.
Maharaj, see now we have a subtle body inside this body, and we have a spiritual body. So a spiritual body, it has its mind, intelligence and ego. And this material body, do we have a separate thing as mind, intelligence and ego? Are they different?
Well, the soul has its own thinking and intelligence, observation, memory, etc. The soul also has, but not very well developed now. That? So most of that function is taken over at the moment in this world by the material mind, intelligence, and ego.
This is two different things.
Yeah, one is a material thing and the other is part of the soul. So the functions are mostly taken over now by the material subtle body, ego, intelligence, and mind. And the soul is the conscious element behind it, but its functions are not well working at this, not functioning properly at this moment.
Mr. Maharaj, does this mean that as we go higher consciousness, does the consciousness of the soul, mind and ego of the soul, do they develop as well?
Yeah.
So that means that gets, and then...
If we don't develop it, but we get rid of the body, then we end up with impersonal Brahman realization, which is not much development of that soul. It's simply out of the material body, basically. Free from material body, but it doesn't develop. So when we do bhakti, then we develop our spiritual identity. I am the servant of Krishna. I exist and Krishna exists separately. So there's an identity of our own separate from Krishna. If we don't have that bhakti, and we say I am spirit, soul, finished, and there's no other identity. So we're all alone. I am something spiritual, finished. And when we just have I exist and Supreme Lord exists, and we establish a relationship through devotion of love, then automatically that love gives rise to feelings, perceptions, etc. So therefore we get spiritual senses, spiritual emotion, spiritual heart, spiritual intelligence, and spiritual body to do the activities of service. If we don't have an object of affection and service, then we don't even need spiritual body. We're not going to serve anybody. Why do we need a spiritual body? Why do we need senses if we're not going to perceive anyone except ourselves? So when we engage in devotional service, then all these things automatically develop.
These Japanese scientists, they recently claimed that when they put two female rats together, they can produce an offspring. It's a recent article.
Yeah, came in the paper.
Two female. So how is possible when, I mean, in material platform, in material world, with the physical anatomy,
Yeah.
how this thing can...
Well, these are new things. They're so many interesting things. I think they did also some other thing which they got the they got goat milk with spider webs coming out of it, because they need more spider webs to make stronger, ropes or something like that. So they put the spider genes into the goat, and they ended up with goat milk with spider webs in it. And then every time the goat milk comes out, they get a lot of spider webs, and this is the way they can make all these, fibers out of the spider webs, which are very fine and very, very strong. We can't make them with synthetic means spider webs, but they're so strong and fine. So they want to make, like weave cloth out of it or something like that. So they did that. That's one of their little experiments. Another one, I think they made a fluorescent rabbit or something. They took the genes from one of these fluorescent fish that glow in the dark under the water, took that gene and stuck it into the rabbit, and they got a fluorescent rabbit. It glows in the dark. The rabbit glows in the dark. So they've done all sorts of weird things like this,
It's interfering with the natural.
Yeah, they've done things which can look amusing, but they also can be very dangerous. We don't know the final results of all of these experiments people are doing, like cloning, etc. You're thinking it's good for us or bad for us. Nobody really knows what the final result is.
Got mutants.
Yeah, it's interfering with the natural process and producing things. But of course, it can go two ways. One is we can manipulate in this way, hoping to get so-called better, but what is the standard for better? Nobody really knows. So you can make stronger people or something like that, but there may be worse people also, more evil. So what is the use of that? Then we end up with a lot of, criminal people running around the world who are very strong. So what is the use of that? I mean, very bad. So nobody's really thought about the issues too much, but we can end up with a lot of problems this way. This is what asuras do, basically. They want to produce more of their kind of evil creatures, so they'll do anything to do that. So this is what can happen as a result of this manipulation. The asuras get a hold of it; they can produce a mess of the world.
Maharaj, you're talking about mind just now. There's a person by the name of Yuri Geller, he can bend spoons.
Yeah.
So actually using his mind power to bend spoon and move.
Well, some people say it's fake, I don't know, but there are some genuine cases like that, a few in Russia also. And the scientists, they very carefully studied it, and they found that there is some sort of energy that they emit. It takes a lot of power on the part usually, a lot of energy, they get very tired afterwards. But somehow they can use some certain energy, and it can have effects like that.
They can just bend it. Some yogi power.
Some power is there. In other words, the thought can influence the object. That's the idea. So therefore, it must be real. Thought must be real.
So what about, like, people say that sometimes some yogi or some really advanced person, he can look at you and can read your mind, what you're thinking, things like that. Does it mean that his mind is stronger than this? He actually manipulate your mind or control your mind?
Can.
Can it?
Yeah. So that's also mind control.
There's an art there.
Control mind. They also study that in the modern world. Actually, everything is mind control in one sense in the modern world. Advertisements are based on mind control. They subtly use techniques by which they can influence your mind without you thinking about it. Modern world is like that. They know certain things can affect your mind in certain ways. Subliminal messages are there. They can affect your mind. Certain words can affect your mind. Certain colors can affect. Certain sounds can affect you in certain ways. Certain images, subtle images can affect you. So they put all this together, and then they make you buy a product that way. And you don't even know you're buying it, but you buy it because of all these things that are controlling you. So this is very common in the modern world. All big companies use it. They've studied psychology very well, and they've learned all the techniques of influencing you so that you'll give your money away.
Like advertising.
Yeah. It's very highly developed, by which they influence you. So this is a very gross way of doing it. The other way is by mind to mind. That can also work that way. And that also works.
Hypnotism.
Yeah, it's like hypnotism, actually. People sell things to you. If they're good, they can sell you anything. A good salesman could sell you anything. He could make you sign over your whole bank account, probably. And they do that. People have done that. There are cases where they can make you have no money, but you'll pay $7,000 to take a certain course of this or that for some reason, you know, the self-improvement course. And so you'll auction off all your houses, whatever you got, just to take that course. Why? Because they know the technique of controlling your mind by speaking to you. And so you'll give away your money like that, even if you don't have it. And there's many people who love that actually.
Does it boil down to karma?
Huh?
Does this boil down to karma?
No, this is interference. Huh? We're manipulating people's mind beyond their free will by using certain techniques.
Can they use that type of consciousness?
What's that?
Can they use that type of normal things to attain consciousness?
Well, what this points out is the mind, there's certain rules the mind goes by. And if you learn the tricks, then you can control people's minds. The other way, we can also use the tricks nicely to avoid getting caught in this material world. In other words, we can control the mind using the same means to get out of the world. If we use them properly. So the mind is the best friend, the mind is the worst enemy. And if somebody else knows the tricks, then he can control your mind, then you're really stuck, because then you're under control, your free will is gone. But that basically is what happens in the modern world. Some intelligent people are controlling everybody else.
Everybody's dressing like Beckham, talking about him, football player.
Yeah, it's all manipulation.
Mixing like an icon.
I read somewhere saying that God has only opened one of his eyes to human technologies. God has opened only one of his eyes to humans so that they can achieve better results in their material science or anything. Does it mean that forever we won't solve it? I mean, forever there won't be any solve for problems faced by humans?
We cannot solve the problems by material means. We can compromise it to some degree, but ultimately disaster. The only way we can do it actually is solve the problems by coming to a correct balance and understanding the laws of karma properly. And when we do that, then we can come to some sort of peaceful world. Still, we have to die. We cannot solve that problem, but at least we can live peacefully. If we don't understand that law of karma, then we can't even live peacefully at all. We can't solve the problem of birth and death neither. Okay.
And then some even claim that it's a form of an initiation or something, you know, where they feel like spiritually
Yeah,
rejuvenated.
it could be. So as I said, there are many forms of energy in this world, subtle as well as gross. So there's many healing energies, subtle energies. They're still material. They're not spiritual, they're still material. But if one has those energies, one can utilize those energies and make people feel good also. That's possible.
But by doing so, by hugging, what I heard that she's been hugging few hundred thousand of people already.
500,000.
500,000, no? I'm sure there's possibility that she observed the karma.
Well, definitely there's a problem there because if you associate with that many people, definitely the influence, whatever you want to call it, you get
But she seems
influence.
steady.
Who knows?
But it's the
Some
same thing,
powers
right?
are
You say,
distinct,
right?
but not spiritual.
Things influence people to think like that. So by reading about
Yeah, then they're susceptible.
people are thinking, wow, this guy is a
material,
real
not
thing. No, actually,
Some people I know gone, then nothing happened. Also, so many.
Maharaj, basically here we have this problem like that we can follow.
Well, it depends on which rules you want to follow. You can follow strict rules or you can follow non-strict rules. Generally, we do the whole non-grain fast on Lord Chaitanya's and Krishna's appearance days. The other ones are not so strict. Some people are more strict and they have no grains on all of the appearance days, all of the avatars.
There's too many hard rules that we have to follow this.
Well, at least on Gaur Purnima and Janmashtami, we follow at least that.
You know, for the Vishnu
Actually,
Tattva,
before that, we weren't even doing it then either. So we were doing nothing, grains all the time. But
I mean, for Vishnu Tattva, all that we have to
Well,
Apart from grain.
some Gaudiya must do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Some even on Radharani's appearance day, they don't take any grains also, yeah. So,
The Nishikade Chaturdasi is coming.
yeah. So some people will fast all day.
That's my question.
So, sir, which one we have to follow? Grains or non-grains?
Well, it depends on you.
That's,
It's come fast. Ramnavani also, Varaha also.
Some they don't take salt, right?
Huh?
They don't take salt.
Oh, I don't think that's strict.
What is the purpose of refraining from grains?
Huh? Vrata, austerity,
Extra after
like a goddess.
good. No, because Maharaj, there was this I don't know whether it's stories or I mean they were telling that if you're fasting and then you break with grains and then the whole fasting's punya is just lost, you know.
Yeah, that's particularly Ekadasi is like that. Yeah? If you take the grains on Ekadasi, then the punya is lost.
Hare Krishna. So I'd like to thank His Holiness Bhanu Maharaj for his wonderful class.
Hene Brahmanadaya Adikavaye Bhumyanti Surya Tejo Vaivadramita Vinimaya Yakta Trisago Varsha Damna Svena Sadani Rastapurvam Satyam Param Dhimahi. Translation, O my Lord Sri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of God, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifest universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the elusive representations of water seen in fire or land seen in water. Only because of him do the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditated upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. But this is the first verse of the Bhagavatam. Generally, scriptures and literary works in Sanskrit begin with some sort of invocation and prayer, and they indicate, usually the first verses will indicate the subject matter and the value of the subject matter, etc. And the goal in studying the subject matter, along with offering respects to different personalities. For instance, in the Nectar of Devotion written by Rupa Goswami, the first verse is a description of Krishna. Krishna is the subject of the work, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But, of course, it's not just about Krishna, it's about Krishna in relation to his devotees, from which we get rasa. So all this is described in the first verse of the Nectar of Devotion. Nectar of Devotion means rasa. And Krishna is the essence of all rasa. And so therefore, Rupa Goswami offers his respects to Krishna, who is the essence of all rasa, describes how he expands his rasa. So the rest of the book is an expansion of that. So here we have a introductory verse. The next verse also is introductory. Puranas are a type of literature written by Vedas. Vedas is the compiler of the Vedas. Vyasa means to compile or put together. Vyasa, V and Asa. To bring things together. Just as a person in the office will compile a bunch of sheets of paper, put them all together and staple them together. That's a compiler. So Vyasadeva was also a compiler. What did he compile? The Vedas. He did not write them. Just as the compiler of the office sheets does not write them, he just puts them together and staples them in the proper order. So this is what Veda Vyasa did to the Vedas. He took the Vedas and made sure they were written down, because they weren't written down before that. They were all oral traditions only. Had them written down and then compiled them into different books for different uses. So eventually we have 4 Vedas coming out. And then Veda Vyasa appointed different rishis to study those Vedas with authority on each Veda. And that started different traditions and sampradayas for each Veda. So he did not write the Veda, he compiled the Veda, divided it up, and assigned different authorities for it. But he did write other works as well. So one of the works he wrote is Mahabharata. He composed that work. And the other is the 18 Puranas. So these are written by Veda Vyasa. The Vedas are not written, they're just compiled. So the Vedas have no source, they have no author. They're simply compiled by Veda Vyasa at the beginning of each Kali Yuga 1,000 times in a day of Brahma. And given to different rishis. However, he doesn't write Puranas and Mahabharata. So these are not eternal. These are composed specifically by Veda Vyasa at a certain point in time. Veda Vyasa also is different. It's only a post. So next Kali Yuga, another Veda Vyasa will appear, and he will also compile the Vedas and write Puranas. So 1,000 times in one day of Brahma will have different jivas taking the role of Vyasa, just as different jivas take the role of Indra or whatever. So they take the role of Veda Vyasa, and they write Puranas and Mahabharata and divide up the Vedas. So why were the Puranas written? Jiva Goswami explains in the Tattva Sandarbha that though the Vedas are there, the complementary literature are the Puranas and the Mahabharata. If we take the word Purana, of course we can derive it, make it being old, something ancient, dealing with ancient topics of history. However, he takes the meaning of that which completes, as in the word Purna. Purna means full or complete. So therefore, a Purana means that which completes the Vedas, makes it full. And that is Purana. So the Puranas are meant to complement or explain the Vedas. So Veda Vyasa is qualified to do this. He is avatar of the Lord. So he is capable of understanding the meaning of the Vedas. Therefore he compiles them and assigns different authors to them. And then he can explain it. And he explains it through the 5th Veda. The 5th Veda is Puranas and Mahabharata. So So this is his explanation. So these are temporal works. They appeared at a certain point in time. However, we should not consider these works to be inferior because they are temporary, whereas the Vedas are eternal. This is the argument given by Shankaracharya. Vedas and Upanishads are eternal, therefore we will take them as superior. And the other works are written at a certain point in time by Veda Vyasa or whoever. They are not eternal, but they are secondary. Jiva Goswami says no, that because they are fifth Veda, they should be accepted as equal. Because they are the explanation of the Vedas, we should not reject them as being inferior. The explanation should not be separated from the Vedas. Otherwise, we have no meaning in the Vedas. So they cannot be taken as inferior. The explanation of the Vedas should not be inferior to the Vedas. Otherwise, when they say, what is the use of studying it? If it's useless, let's be equal. Just as, he gives the example, if we are a jeweler and we make a golden necklace made out of different links, and the necklace looks like this, a nice necklace of gold. So we have to complete the necklace and make it round. So we have one more link to put on the necklace. So to complete it, we should make it out of gold. That which completes the necklace should also be made out of gold, not out of silver, not out of iron. So to complete the Vedas, the fifth Veda should also be gold, like the other Vedas. It should be the same quality, should it not? Otherwise it cannot be called completion. So therefore, on this, by this argument, it says that the Puranas should be taken as equal to the Vedas. Same authority. They should not be considered less. So the reason, of course, for this argument of Shankaracharya is that certain Upanishads talk about impersonal Brahman with no qualities and no form as the ultimate goal. But in the Puranas, and of course in Bhagavad Gita, we find contradiction. So we can get around the contradiction by saying it's inferior, therefore we can reject it. So that's why Shankaracharya says the Puranas and the Mahabharata are inferior. Therefore, we don't have to listen to them. So it's like the superior evidence of the Vedas would say impersonalism. So, Jiva Goswami says, no, you cannot take it like that. The Vedas are superior and the Puranas are inferior. Then that means Veda Vyasa himself must be inferior to write inferior works. Therefore, we should reject the Vedas also because they're divided up by him. He must have communicated them wrongly if he's inferior. So what is the use of the Vedas? So, therefore, he says equal status should be given. If there is some contradiction, we cannot reject the Puranas and the Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, because they say God is a person. We cannot reject that as being inferior evidence. No, it should be equal. We'll have to explain in another way why there's a contradiction. But we cannot reject them. So therefore, the Puranas are taken as equal. Bhagavad Gita is taken as equal to Vedas. This is all Jiva Goswami's argument. The next argument he gives is that of the Puranas, there are Tamasic, Rajasic, and Sattvic Puranas. They're all spiritual, but some are meant for people in the mode of Tamagun, some for Rajagun, and some for Sattvic. So those in Tamagun deal with the worship of Lord Shiva and Agni and Pitras, etc. Those in the mode of passion deal with the worship of Lord Brahma. Those in the mode of goodness deal with Vishnu. So if there's some contradiction there, we should take the higher over the lower. In other words, the Sattvic Purana should have more authority over the Tamasic Purana. Tamasic Purana will say Shiva is supreme. Sattvic Purana will say Vishnu is supreme. Which is supreme? Take the superior. If there's contradiction. However, we're not interested in the modes of material nature. We want to go beyond Sattvic also. So the Bhagavatam is transcendental. It is beyond the modes of material nature. It is directly dealing with something beyond the modes. So in the Bhagavatam itself, in the first canto, there is the whole history of how the Bhagavatam came about. Veda Vyas had written everything, all the different Puranas. He had assigned authorities for the Vedas, written the Mahabharata. But he was not satisfied. Somehow he was feeling discontented. So Narada Muni happened to appear, and he said, yes, I know you are troubled. There's something it's not complete. Puranas is supposed to be complete, but somehow it's not complete. There's something missing here. So what is missing is you have not described directly the ultimate form, personal form of God. Who is that form? You have not directly said that. So you should describe in one Purana who is that supreme personality of Godhead, the final form of Godhead. And you should describe his activities. So you should describe Krishna. So therefore, Veda Vyasa wrote the Bhagavat Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in other words, it is greater than any of the other Puranas because it was written after all of them as a result of Veda Vyasa's frustration on not having said everything. So this is considered the highest work. The next verse, next verse actually will say that. Show how that is true. The third verse. This describes how the Bhagavatam is the topmost fruit on the tree of the Vedas. The Nigama Kalpataram, the tree of Vedic literature, is there. And there's all sorts of scriptures there as fruits on the tree. But what is the topmost fruit? And it's Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's like a tree with all different fruits on it. With a very, very high branch of the tree, there's one very wonderful, sweet fruit. And that fruit does not have any thick skin. Like sometimes we have a fruit, but it has all this skin on it. And then we cut it up and it has a huge seed in it. And it has all these stringy things in the stringy mango like that, you know. Those are disappointment when we see a nice, beautiful fruit. You cut it open, it's got a big seed and all stringy things in it and hard skin. So this fruit is not like that. There is no seed. There is no fibers. There is no skin. It is all mango, all sweet. Very, very sweet and intense all the way through. Which means that it presents Krishna and only Krishna, ultimately. Because Krishna is sweet. This is the sweet aspect of God. Krishna is the sweet aspect of God. So that is compared to the sweet fruit, the mango. So this is the embodied in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the sweetness of Krishna. With no seeds or skin and fibers. There's no extraneous elements there. There's no on reverence. There's no mixture of jnana. Nothing is there. Only the sweetness of Krishna. So this fruit is there, but it is the topmost fruit. So the topmost fruit is also the hardest to get. Because you want to get that fruit, you have to climb up the tree. It is dangerous to go up to the top and then bring it down if you want to relish it. So therefore, it is brought down by the parampara system, hand by hand, personally, until it comes down to the ground, and then we can accept the fruit. If we don't take it that way, it'll shape the tree, it'll fall off, and it'll splash on the ground, and we won't be able to enjoy it. So we have to take it and understand it and relish it through the parampara, through the authorized acharyas, then we'll get the proper meaning, proper taste. And of course, Sukha Mukha, it came from the mouth of Sukadeva Goswami. not this Vedavyas. Vedavyas, of course, presented, therefore he is glorified. But then it came out to Sukadeva Goswami's mouth. Sukadeva was his son. He was actually a Brahmavadi. But by the mercy of the Lord, he became a real Vaishnava devotee. And what was remarkable, that he became a greater devotee than his father. His father is the incarnation of God, Chakravaishnava. So he must be a very great devotee to get that position. But Sukadeva Goswami was greater in the sense that his attraction for Krishna was extreme. His attraction for Radha Krishna was extreme. So therefore, when Sukadeva Goswami recited the Bhagavatam, he became even sweeter because he relished it more than Vedavyas. Why? Because he understood it more. His taste was more there, he understood it more, therefore it became sweeter. So of course, Sukha means parrot. In India we have these little green parrots that sit in the trees with red beaks. They like to pick at the mangoes in the tree. So the parrot that it says, I don't know if it's true or not, anyway, the legend is that when the parrot with his red beak pecks at the right mango, the mango becomes sweeter. Somehow the red beak or something makes the fruit sweeter. So in the same way, Sukadeva Goswami, when he tasted and relished the Bhagavatam and then recited it, it became sweeter. The same way. So anyway, that is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Puranas are there to give the meaning of the Vedas and explain them in a more practical way for us, because the Vedas are very vast, and then the essence of the Upanishads, and the Upanishads speak in riddles. Everything is Brahman. Brahman has no qualities. Brahman is everything. Brahman is here. Brahman is far. He walks, but he does not walk. He is near, but he is far. He's Upanishad. So it speaks in contradictions often. So what does this mean? So it's not so clear to most people. A little bit difficult to understand. And you get whole sections of things. Like, why is it like that? Why is this like that? Chandogya Upanishad, very complex in its meaning. So very mysterious. So therefore Vedavyas clarified that, made it more clear for people. And the clearest understanding we'll find is in the Bhagavad Gita. Because there, he takes all the Vedic philosophy. There's actually almost direct quotations from the different Upanishads there. And he takes those concepts from the Upanishads and simplifies them and makes them very clear for us. So in this way, he defines the tattva, or sambandha, very nicely. Who is God? Who is Jiva? What is matter, basically? This is what the Upanishads define, but in a rather oblique way through mystical statements that are hard to understand. So Bhagavad Gita clarifies that very nicely and gives a very clear idea of these ideas. So the philosophy is one thing. The Bhagavatam also does this, but it goes beyond that, because one aspect of the philosophy is God. But the purpose of Bhagavatam is, of course, to present all of this philosophy also. But more than that, Vedavyas was told by Narada Muni to actually present Krishna. That form of God. So the essence of Bhagavatam, therefore, is the description of Krishna, his form, pastimes, his qualities, which can only be expressed along with his devotees. You cannot have Leela of Krishna by himself. What can he do if he sits there and, boy, there can be no Leela. What can Krishna do? There's all blackness all around him. So he needs relationships, and in his relationships, Leela is expressed in a place that is Sri Vrindavan. So this is actually the whole and final essence of the Bhagavad in the 10th canto and Krishna's pastimes, and particularly the pastimes of Vrindavan. These are the essence of everything. These are the highest pastimes. So actually, Krishna Chakravarti, one of the main commentators on the Bhagavatam, and of course Sanatana Goswami also is very important. Sanatana Goswami actually wrote a commentary of the 10th canto, because the 10th canto is pastimes. And Vishnu Chakravarti, he wrote a commentary on the whole of the Bhagavatam, but the most elaborate commentaries are on 10th canto again, and particularly the Braja pastimes of Krishna. Very, very elaborate commentaries of Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. Like Sudeva Goswami, who relished the Bhagavatam, Vishnu Chakravarti also is one who greatly relished Krishna and his pastime. So therefore his commentary is very, very sweet, very, very nice to listen to. That he explains the nature of Krishna and expands upon the basic text. And that way we can appreciate the sweetness of Krishna. So anyway, the Bhagavatam ultimately, though it discusses the Sambandha Tattva, ultimately it concentrates upon Krishna, who is Ishvara, and the process to attain Krishna, which is bhakti, and prema, which is the prayojana, the ultimate goal of our bhakti. That is our loving experience of bliss relating to Krishna. So these things are discussed in the Bhagavatam and shown very directly in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. What is prema? That is illustrated in the 10th canto. The prema of Krishna and the prema of the devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that Shastras only present three things ultimately: Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. That is the philosophy, the process, and the goal. Which are necessary for doing anything, even in the material world. If you've got any subject matter or textbook, this is what it has to do. It has to present some explanation of what's what. When you're going to discuss like mathematics, it will define different things, different elements like equations, geometry, whatever you have to discuss. It'll define what they are and how they relate to each other. This is called sambandha. It will give you a process and it will give you a goal to get to the goal. We need in other words, what do we study it for? Because we want to get a certain result. So the goal is there, and we have a process of getting to the goal as well. So that any subject matter will do that. If there's no goal, then why study it? So there must be a goal, and there must be a way of getting to the goal. So Scripture does this. It presents philosophy, it presents a goal, and a process to get to the goal. These three things are there. So the Bhagavatam also does that. More directly than other works, and therefore it is said to have no strings and no seed and no skin, because it rejects all the extraneous elements like karma and jnana and yoga, etc., and makes them irrelevant and concentrates upon bhakti. So, here is the first verse. Actually, I heard that it said that Bhaktisiddhanta gave a lecture 5 days on the first verse of the Bhagavatam. And of course here also, the purple actually, Prabhupada, which is very, very long. Also, can't even go into the whole thing actually. The work begins with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which is, we can say, a mantra. Actually, it is one of the Diksha mantras of the Sri Vaishnavas, Ramanuja's followers. This is one of their mantras that they chant. as one of their, when we chant Hare Krishna, we chant this, Bhagavate Vasudevaya. They do this, they get this from the Guru, chant. So it is a very sacred mantra. Vasudev means the son of Vasudeva, which can refer obviously to Krishna then, because Krishna was born as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So therefore Vasudeva means Krishna. So here is obeisances to Krishna, who is Bhagavan. So because Bhagavate in the dative form after Maham, Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Obeisances unto Vasudeva, the son of Krishna, Vasudeva is Krishna, who is Bhagavan. Of course, what does Bhagavan mean? And then we get into the whole subject of Brahman, Paramam, or Bhagavan. So Bhagavan means the full aspect of the Lord, not partial aspect as Paramam or Brahman. Not impersonal, not functional as far as material world is concerned, but Supreme Lord in all His opulence, in all of His powers, in all of His sweetness, in the spiritual world where He associates with His devotees. Basically, Bhagavan refers to the Lord who has a relationship with His devotees in the spiritual world. Paramatma refers to the Lord functioning for material creation. He pervades all material energy and carries out the work, oversees and witnesses everything in material creation as Paramatma. And Brahman is even more indirect. It is like the effulgence of the Lord. It is very indirect. It is the secondary energy of the Lord. Therefore, Bhagavan here refers to the form of the Lord who has a personal relationship with the devotee, which causes ananda or bliss. Some people will explain the word Vasudeva as not meaning the son of Vasudeva Krishna, but Vasudeva meaning a form of Vishnu called Vasudeva. We have Chaturvyuha, which the Sri Sampradaya, they also worship the Chaturvyuha, Chaturshana and Vasudeva. So they just take that as a Vishnu form with four hands. Other people will analyze the word Vasudeva from the word vas, to dwell. So therefore Vasudeva means the Lord who dwells everywhere, the all-pervading Lord. This is probably Shankaracharya's meaning for that. The all-pervading Lord, in other words, more like Paramatma. However, we know that the subject matter of this work is primarily Krishna. 10th canto is the ultimate subject matter, that is Krishna. So therefore, for that reason, we will say that Vasudeva means the son of Vasudeva Krishna, who is Bhagavan, rather than anything else. So we're not offering our respects to a Vishnu form or to the all-pervading aspect of Paramatma or anything like that. We're offering to the form of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, who is Bhagavan, has a relationship with his devotees. We can argue, of course, why not just say Krishna? Oh no, Bhagavate Krishna. We say that also. Be much easier, one says. So it's not really explained why, but when we say Vasudeva as the son of Vasudeva, we imply there the pastimes of Krishna, because technically God is not born. He is unborn. He's eternal, so he cannot be born at a certain point in time. Yet the mysterious and remarkable thing about Krishna is he is born, even though he's unborn. So he was actually the son of Vasudeva Devaki. You cannot say he wasn't, that it was only an illusion. It wasn't. They saw him. He was born. Of course, he was born in a different way because he was born from the mind of Vasudeva, who went into the body of Devaki. So it was not a normal material birth. But nevertheless, Krishna was born in the normal way, like a baby from Devaki. And he came out as a normal baby also, a little small child. But it's a remarkable thing, he came out with 4 hands. But then he changed it to a normal baby with 2 hands also. So therefore, he is unborn, but actually, when he appears in this material world for his pastime, he also is born. So he's both, unborn and born. This is the inconceivable nature of the Lord. Why does he cause this contradiction? Why does he confuse everybody like this? Because he is very merciful to his devotees. The devotees long to see him in this form, therefore, he takes this form. There is the story in Bhagavatam that Vasudeva and Devaki previously, and previously, and previously, 3 lifetimes, they desired to have the Lord as their son. So he came as Krishna Garbha, and as Vamana, and finally as Vasudeva or Krishna. Because they longed to have Krishna as their son. So in each time he became their son. So this is the mercy of the Supreme Lord to do this, even though he's unborn, appear and to become the child of someone. So, but we can always argue that since actually the pastimes in Vrindavan are superior to the pastimes in Mathura and Dwarka, this Vasudeva, this name Vasudeva actually is a Mathura and Dwarka name, which is inferior to the name of Krishna or Shyam Sundar, etc.